from the Bantu language of South Africa. And in this language, you're going to hear in the song, they use their tongue to make this very unique clicking sound as a part of the language. So you'll hear the song in Xhosa first, and then they sing an English translation to go along with it. So you'll hear exactly what we're singing or what it means. And pata pata means touch, touch, which is kind of a big part of the song, because what's gonna happen is at the very start of the song, we're gonna go touch, touch, and then touch, touch with the other side, right? So that part of the song, pretty straightforward, right? We have our touch, touch, and our touch, touch. And then what gets kind of tricky is this next part where we go toes out, in, heels back in, toes back in. So again, our toes go out, then our heels go out, then our heels come back, and then our toes go in, okay? So one more time, when you're doing that too, you can think of like a penguin, and then a pigeon, and then a penguin, and a pigeon, except for the pigeon's kind of straight by the end, right? So let's go back to the beginning where we have our touch, 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 and then toes out, heels in, toes in. Very good. And then we're gonna go knee, knee, and this is your right knee, so it might look opposite on the screen. I can't remember if my camera flips it or not, but you use your right knee for 2, and then your left foot kicks twice. And when you, in between the kicks, you're gonna go kick, touch, and then, pretend I'm standing like this, right? We jump to the side, clap, and start all over. So this is called a 4-wall line dance because we start here, right? And then actually jump the wrong way. You're gonna jump to your right. And so then we jump, clap. The next time around, it'll go jump, clap here. The next jump would be here. So we face all 4 walls of a room, and you just keep repeating those moves as we go. Now, today we're just learning our feet. There are supposed to be arm movements that go with it too, but it's a little tricky. So we're gonna learn it a little bit at a time and just start today with learning those foot movements. So let's try all the foot movements together, and then we'll add the music in. You ready? We start with our touch right. Touch, left, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, clap, touch, touch, left touch, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump. Start with our right touch, right, left, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, clap, right, left, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, touch, touch, left, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, touch, right, left, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, clap, touch, touch, left, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, clap, touch, touch, left, good, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, touch, right, touch left, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, clap, one more time, touch, touch, left, toes, heels, heels, toes, knee, knee, kick, kick, jump, clap. All right, good job helping me learn and do the pata pata. That was just our feet. Hopefully you're getting the hang of that. It moves pretty quickly, especially when you get to the toes, heels, heels, toes part where you're going out, in, like that. So as you're doing that part, hopefully you're catching on. Practice it so you can get really good at it. And then next time, we are going to try adding in our arm movements It's still a little bit of a challenge for me, but I think we'll feel really accomplished if we can get it. So we'll be learning that next time as well. Make sure when it's our dance portion, you are up out of your chair and moving. This is not for you to just watch me. Oh, no, 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 no. I need you up out of your chair, moving with me and dancing along with me, especially when we're doing the pata pata. All right, well, enjoy the rest of your lesson. Thanks for dancing along with me. Read the rhythm pattern to this song, and then we're going to read the melody, and let's see if you recognize it from a lesson that Mr. Weed had done before. Here we go. Cinco pa taka-dee ta. Cinco pa ta ta. Ta-dee 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 ta ta. Ta-dee 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 ta. Ta-dee ta-dee ta ta. Ta-dee 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 ta. Ta-dee ta-dee ta ta. Does the rhythm sound familiar? Let's check out the melody and see if that helps you out. We start on me, and the first part is a little tricky till we get used to, I think, what we're seeing. But if we start on me, we jump down to what? Do, right? That's a skip down, just like that. But then we have this big jump down, and if we look, we're going to sing the note right above it, too. These are both below do. Do you remember what they could be? Low so and low la. So we have a lot of low so's and low la's in this song. So when you see this note, low so, and we see this, it's low la. And beyond that, we do have some higher so's and higher la's as well. So let's see if we can figure those out as we go. We do also have some re's in there, so watch out for a note between me and do later on. Here we go, mi, do. So, la, so, mi, do, mi, so, la, so, mi, do, re, do, la, so, mi, re, do, mi, do, la, so, mi, do, mi, so. So, mi, re, do. Whew, that's a long song. Do you recognize it? Does it sound familiar to you? Well, it is our Weevily Wheat song. Can you follow along and sing with me? Here we go. Don't want your weevily wheat. Don't want your barley. Take some flour and half an hour and bake a cake for Charlie. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 8 is 40. Good job. Well, let's switch gears, and now we're going to continue working on our Weevily Wheat song, but we're going to be adding in our cut pattern. Thanks for helping to read our Weevily Wheat song on the staff, and now we're going to take that Weevily Wheat song and we're going to add our cut pattern to it. So let's review the cut pattern first, and then we'll see if we can start putting it with the song. Here we go. Clap, clap, bumblebee, clap, up, down. Clap, turn, touch, touch, change, pat, down. Yeah, do you remember it? Okay, well, for our song, when we sing, don't want no weevily wheat, don't want no barley, take some flour and half an hour and bake a cake for Charlie. The first half of the song, we should be doing the cut pattern 2 times through. You want to try it with me? You do not have to sing with me as we're trying to fit it all together. If it's easier for you to just do the cut pattern first, that's fine. Hopefully, eventually, you'll feel up to the challenge of singing it and doing it, because it's a little bit like this thing, right? Like rubbing your stomach and patting your head. It's hard to do 2 things at once, but it's a great challenge once you get the hang of it, okay? So let's give it a shot together. Here we go. Don't want your weevily wheat. Don't want your barley. Take some flour and half an hour and bake a cake for Charlie. Yeah, you've got it. Good job. All right, let's try that one more time. Here we go. Don't want your weevily wheat. Don't want your barley. Take some flour and half an hour and bake a cake for Charlie. Now we have this next section, and our next section goes 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 8 is 40. I wish they used something other than your 5 times tables, because your 5 times tables are kind of your easier ones, right? Counting by 5 is pretty easy. Well, during that section, you are going to be creating your own cut pattern to go along with that, okay? So during the times table section, I want you to think of a cut pattern that you can do yourself. Now, here's the thing. Every beat doesn't have to be different. Like every measure doesn't have to be different. You can repeat things, right? Like if you look at our cut pattern, it's not that long of a cut pattern, but it repeats itself over and over. So if you came up with like 4 or 8 good beats, then you just repeat it, and that's for the rest of the song, that's the pattern that you would do. So don't overthink it. Don't make it so hard that you can't execute it every single time, okay? So I'm gonna send you on your way to go create a cut pattern, and the next time we do this, I want you to be performing your cut pattern during this B section, okay? In our song, we have our A section, we have our B section, these two different sounding sections, right? Our don't want your weevily wheat, don't want your barley, take some flour and half an hour and bake a cake for Charlie. Sounds totally different than 5 times 5 is 25, 5 times 6 is 30. Right? We have this whole different section going on here. And so I want you to come up with your own pattern. Again, do 4 beats or 8 beats. It's going to be kind of tricky or weird if you don't do 4 or 8, because that lines up with our measures, right, in our song. So if you choose 4 beats or 8 beats to repeat, it will work out evenly with the rest of our song for our B section. So be creative. Think of different ways you can use your cup. You can use things out of the cup pattern or other things that we've already done, right? So you can tap your cup on the table, you can tap the top of it, pick it up, tap it, bottom. If you want to try to work in the clap and the turn in some different way, you could totally do that. We've tapped our cups from side to side before. You can turn it over and tap differently. All kinds of different things that you can use from stuff we've already done, or come up with your own new cup pattern for that B section. Happy creating. Write it down. Don't forget to write it down so that you remember it for our next lesson when we do this again, and you get to play your B section that you created along with it. I have to go work on my own B section so I can show you one that I made up for next lesson too, and we'll each do our own patterns during the B section. Can't wait to do that with you. Happy cup composing. This year, we're going to study a piece of music called The Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra. You should have received one of these paper booklets that you can use to study along so that you can physically write down in the booklet as we go along and as we're studying the piece of music. There's lots of things and places for you to color and doodle too, so if you would like to decorate your booklet accordingly, that is just fine. The Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra was written by Benjamin Britten. There's a picture of him. He's probably the most modern composer that we will have studied. He was born in 1913, so in the 20th century, and learned to play piano and read music from his mom. He began piano when he was 7 years old, and he learned to play the viola when he was 10. He wrote classical music during the 20th century, including orchestral and chamber music. So orchestral music means for large orchestras, chamber music means for small groups of instruments, not necessarily just string quartets or that kind of thing, but small chamber groups that you would play in just one room, not in a large music hall. He wrote vocal pieces and operas. I have had the privilege of singing some of his vocal pieces, and he's a really, really good composer, and he has written some really beautiful and interesting music. So here to our right, we see that there's a picture of Benjamin Britten. He played the viola and the piano, as I have there, and there's a picture of England and the flag of England behind it. This particular piece of music was composed in 1945. It was written to showcase the tone, color, or do you remember the word that we learned, timbre, of each instrument and section of the orchestra. The piece begins with a musical theme. It's played first by the entire orchestra, and then each family plays after that. And then after that, there's a variation played by each individual instrument. And then finally at the end, it returns for a big fugue to end the whole piece of music. So it's kind of a long piece, but it has lots of different sections to listen to and focus on. So let's talk about what's a theme, a variation, and a fugue, because those are some interesting words that we may not all know just yet. Well, the theme is the main melody that the whole piece of music is based on. And when the whole orchestra plays all together, it's called tutti, which is an Italian word for meaning everybody all together. After the orchestra plays tutti, the theme is played by each instrument family, and it goes in the order of woodwinds, brass, strings, and then percussion. We talked about variations that happen after. Well, variations mean that they take the theme and it might be slightly changed for each instrument. So it sounds similar, but a little different. After each instrument is featured, the entire orchestra comes back together for the final fugue. The instruments come back one by one, beginning with the piccolo, and then when they've all returned, the theme is heard one last time with the brass section. So over here, we see these colored lines, and this is to represent the fugue. The way a fugue works is almost like a round, but not exactly, where one group comes in, and then the next one comes in and layers beneath it, and then the next group would come and layer beneath it. So as you hear the fugue at the end, you start to hear lots and lots of layers and a texture that sounds probably more complicated than when you hear just the one melody at a time. Let's listen to the theme that's played by the entire orchestra. Now let's listen to the fugue that we hear at the very end. In other lessons, we'll be checking out the different variations of each instrument.
Were you able to hear the piccolo start, all of the other instrument families join in, and then finish up with the brass and percussion sections? If you weren't able to hear each section enter, I encourage you to rewind it, listen again, and really specifically listen to hear how different instruments and sections are layering on top of one another like we discussed. We'll probably get to listen to it again before we're done studying the piece, but next time we're going to start listening to each individual instrument's variations.
I'm excited to share with you this very overdramatic but really silly book called The Composer is Dead. And it's narrated by Lemony Snicket. If you've ever read any of the series of unfortunate events or books by Lemony Snicket, you know that they're meant to be very silly and, again, overdramatic in their nature. So while it's presented in a very serious tone of voice, you'll notice that there are lots of puns and they're making lots of jokes and stereotypes about certain instruments. So I think you'll really like the book. If you've ever heard an orchestra play, then you know that the musicians are most certainly guilty of something. Where exactly were the violins on the night in question? Did anyone see the harp? Is the trumpet protesting a bit too boisterously? In this perplexing murder mystery, everyone seems to have a motive. Everyone has an alibi, and nearly everyone is a musical instrument. But the composer is still dead. Perhaps you can solve the crime. Join the inspector as he interrogates all of the unusual suspects. Listen to the music of Nathaniel Stuckey performed by the San Francisco Symphony. Hear for yourself exactly what took place on that fateful, well-orchestrated evening. So listen carefully, not just to the story, but to the beautiful music that was composed by Nathaniel Stuckey to go along with this book. We've been studying instruments of the orchestra, and in this book and the recording that goes along with it, you will find some beautiful, beautiful music, and listen to how the music goes along with the story. It's not just music for music's sake. It is meant to go along with the story and enhance it. So follow along and listen carefully. At the end, we'll talk a little bit about the mystery and how it was solved and what the ending really means. Enjoy The Composer is Dead.
The composer is dead. Composer is a word which here means a person who sits in a room, muttering and humming and figuring out what notes the orchestra is going to play. This is called composing. But last night, the composer was not muttering. He was not humming. He was not moving or even breathing. This is called decomposing. The composer's death was very suspicious, and so the inspector was called in to find the murderer or murderers and haul them off to jail. "I will begin by interviewing all the usual suspects," the inspector said. Like all people in his line of work, this composer had many enemies lurking in the orchestra. They can lurk all they like, but I will find them wherever they are lurking. I will find them if they are lurking in the strings. I will find them if they are lurking in the brass. I will find them if they are lurking in the woodwinds. I will find them if they are lurking in the percussion section. I will find them wherever they are lurking. I will find them! The inspector was a very handsome and intelligent person, not unlike myself. "I swear on my own intelligence and good looks," the inspector said, "I will solve this terrible crime against humanity and/or classical music." And with an intelligent, if somewhat flamboyant gesture, he reached into his pocket and took out the notebook he used for all official business. "First, I will interrogate the strings," he cried. "Strings, where were you on the night in question?" The violins answered first, of course. The violin section is divided into the first violins, who have the trickier parts to play, and the second violins, who are more fun at parties. "We were performing a waltz," said the violins. We played graceful melodies, so the ladies and gentlemen could spin around and around and around until they felt dizzy and somewhat nauseous. This kept us busy all night. "Aha!" the inspector cried, making a note in his notebook. "Perhaps you murdered the composer for making you play so much." "Don't be ridiculous," the violins said. "Violins are the stars of any orchestra. If we killed the composer, we would have to find work at square dances or in romantic restaurants." "That's true," the inspector admitted. "But what about you, cellos and basses?" The cellos and basses sighed. The cellos and basses are often weary from dragging their large bodies around. The basses in particular are so enormous that they can't even fit into taxicabs without sticking their curly heads out of the window. "We were providing accompaniment," they said. "You can't waltz without a reliable 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's boring, but it's steady work." "Aha!" the inspector cried. Perhaps you murdered the composer for giving you such boring things to play. On the contrary, the cellos and basses said, we don't feel the need to show off like certain stringed instruments we could mention. Well, I guess that takes care of the strings, the inspector said. Oh, the violas! I forgot all about you. Everyone forgets about us, said the violas bitterly. We play the notes and the chords that nobody cares about. We play crucial counter-melodies nobody hears. We often have to stay late after performances and stack up all of the chairs. We spent last night feeling sorry for ourselves as usual. But we did notice that the concertmaster was acting strange. She was talking and laughing with the composer and carrying a suspicious black case. The concertmaster is the best violin player in the entire orchestra and is often accused of treachery. I was talking with the composer about my cadenza, she said, using a word which here means fancy solo part. I'd never murder someone who was giving me such an excellent opportunity to show off. That's enough, strings. That's enough, strings. That's enough, strings! You all have very good alibis, the inspector said, taking notes in his notebook. But the composer is still dead. Perhaps the murderer is lurking in the woodwinds. Where were you last night, woodwinds? Speak up! Speak up! We were doing bird imitations, said the flutes, the shiniest and highest pitched of the woodwinds. It seems like that's all we ever do. Whenever the orchestra needs a bird, there we are. Aha! The inspector cried. Perhaps you murdered the composer for making you act like birds. Don't make us laugh, the flutes cried. We're much too wimpy and high-pitched for murder. Ask the reed instruments. They're much sneakier than us. Sneaky? Said the clarinets. We're not sneaky. By the way, Inspector, that is a very handsome jacket you are wearing. Oh, thank you, said the inspector. Such shiny buttons, said the bassoons. You think so? The inspector said, blushing slightly. And the color is very flattering, said the oboe. Really? The inspector said, twirling around. That's very kind of you to say so. But why are you giggling, flutes? Ignore them, said the first oboe, leaning in close. If I were you, I'd question the brass instruments instead. They're a violent lot. The brass? The inspector said, writing in his notebook. You really think so? You can trust me, the oboe said. Everyone trusts me. After all, I tune up the entire orchestra by playing an A. Listen.